Something massive is happening in the gold market right now, and if you own gold, or you're thinking about it, you need to understand what's really going on behind the scenes. Because what I'm about to show you isn't being reported in the mainstream financial media. They're too busy talking about tech stocks and crypto to notice the seismic shift that's taking place in the physical gold market. Let me start with a question that might sound strange. Why would China fly 747 cargo planes loaded with cash to Switzerland in the middle of the night? I'm not making this up. This actually happened last month. Multiple flights, each carrying hundreds of millions in currency, landing at Zurich airport under cover of darkness. The cargo? They weren't bringing cash to Switzerland. They were taking something out. Gold. Massive amounts of physical gold. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Swiss refineries that were melting down 400-ounce London good delivery bars into smaller 1-kilogram bars for Asian buyers, they're now reporting something unprecedented. They can't get enough gold to meet demand. For the first time in decades, the refineries that process 70% of the world's gold are having to turn away orders. Not because they don't have capacity, but because they can't source the physical metal. Think about that for a second. Switzerland, the global hub of gold refining, is running out of gold to refine. How is that even possible when gold is supposedly just another commodity trading on exchanges around the world? Well, that's exactly the point. There's the gold market you see, the one on your screen with prices flashing up and down. And then there's the real gold market, the one where actual metal changes hands. And these two markets are starting to diverge in ways that should terrify anyone holding paper assets. Let me paint you a picture of what's really happening. Right now, as I'm recording this, the COMEX, that's the main gold futures exchange in New York, is showing 324,000 contracts open for December delivery. Each contract represents 100 ounces of gold. Do the math. That's 32.4 million ounces of gold that traders are betting on. Now here's the problem. The COMEX only has 8.2 million ounces of registered gold available for delivery. Registered gold is the stuff that's actually available to be delivered if someone demands physical metal. The rest is eligible gold. It's in the warehouse, but not for sale. So we have paper claims for 32.4 million ounces, but only 8.2 million ounces available. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. Normally, this isn't a problem because hardly anyone actually takes delivery. They just roll their contracts forward or settle in cash. It's a paper game. But something changed about 6 months ago. Delivery requests started spiking. Not by a little, by 300%. Suddenly, everyone wants their physical gold. And it's not just retail investors. I'm talking about sovereign wealth funds, central banks, family offices managing billions. They're all doing the same thing, converting paper claims to physical metal. The question is why? What do they know that the average investor doesn't? To understand this, we need to look at what happened in London last year. The London Bullion Market Association, they're the ones who oversee the massive gold vaults under the streets of London, admitted something shocking. They said there was a liquidity crisis in the physical gold market. Translation? They almost ran out of gold. How does London, the center of global gold trading for 300 years, almost run out of gold? Because for every ounce of physical gold in those vaults, there are 100 ounces of paper claims against it. It's fractional reserve banking, but with gold. And just like fractional reserve banking, it works great until everyone wants their money, or in this case, their gold, at the same time. The Bank for International Settlements, that's the central bank of central banks, published a report 3 months ago that should have been front-page news. They revealed that the paper gold market is now 100 times larger than the physical gold market. Let that sink in. For every ounce of real gold, there are 100 ounces of paper promises. It's like a game of musical chairs with 100 people in one chair. As long as the music keeps playing, everything's fine. But what happens when the music stops? Well, we're starting to find out. Because the music is slowing down. And the smart money, the banks, the billionaires, the sovereign wealth funds, they're quietly grabbing the chairs while everyone else is still dancing. Look at what central banks are doing. In 2022, central banks bought more gold than any year since 1967. Last year, they broke that record. This year, they're on pace to break it again. We're talking about 1,000 metric tons of gold per year flowing into central bank vaults. That's more than a third of total global mine production. But here's the part they don't want you to know. The official numbers only show purchases that are reported to the IMF. China, Russia, Turkey, India, they're buying gold through state-owned enterprises and sovereign wealth funds that don't show up in the official statistics. The real number could be double what's reported. Why are central banks hoarding gold like it's 1933? Because they see what's coming. They understand that the global monetary system, the one built on the dollar as the reserve currency, is breaking down. And when it does, the only thing that will matter is who has the gold. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is happening right now. Saudi Arabia just announced they're accepting payment for oil in currencies other than dollars. That's never happened since the petrodollar agreement in 1974. India is buying Russian oil with rupees. China is buying Iranian oil with yuan. Brazil and Argentina are conducting trade in their own currencies. The dollar is losing its monopoly. And when a reserve currency loses its status, history shows us what happens next. The British pound was the world's reserve currency for over 100 years. When it lost that status after World War II, it lost 80% of its value. The same thing happened to the Dutch guilder before that, and the Spanish real before that. Each time, the people who preserved their wealth were the ones who owned gold. Not paper promises of gold, not ETFs that say they own gold, physical gold that they could hold in their hands. Which brings me to something interesting that's happening in the ETF market. The GLD, that's the biggest gold ETF, is supposed to have 900 tons of gold in its vaults. But here's the thing. They don't let anyone audit those vaults. No independent verification, no serial numbers on the bars. Just trust us, they say. Meanwhile, something strange is happening with the GLD's inventory. Large blocks of gold, we're talking 10 to 20 tons at a time, are leaving the ETF. Where's it going? The ETF won't say. But I can tell you where similar gold is showing up. In the private vaults of Singapore, Dubai, and Hong Kong. The same cities where the ultra-wealthy are moving their physical assets. It's not just gold either. Look at silver. The COMEX silver inventory just hit a 30-year low. Industrial users, the companies that actually need silver for solar panels and electronics, are bypassing the futures market entirely. They're going straight to the miners and refiners, offering premiums of 30% above spot price for physical delivery. Tesla just signed a deal to buy silver directly from a mine in Nevada. Apple is stockpiling silver for future iPhone production. These companies understand something that most investors don't. The paper price of silver might say $24 an ounce, but try buying 10,000 ounces of physical silver for delivery next week. You'll pay $30 or more, if you can find it at all. This disconnect between paper prices and physical availability is creating opportunities that we haven't seen since the 1970s. Back then, gold was officially priced at $35 an ounce, but you couldn't actually buy it for that price. The black market price was $200. When the government finally gave up trying to control the price, gold shot to $850. We're seeing the same setup today. The paper price says gold is $2,000 an ounce. But try buying a monster box of gold eagles from the US Mint. They're rationing sales because they can't keep up with demand. Premiums on physical coins are running 10% above spot. In some Asian markets, premiums are hitting 15%. By the way, if you're sitting on a retirement account with $100,000 or more, there's something you should know. You can actually hold physical gold in your IRA or 401k. Not ETFs, not mining stocks, actual gold coins and bars in your retirement account. I put together a free guide that explains exactly how it works, including which custodians to use and what types of gold qualify. It's in the description below. Might be worth checking out given what's happening in the markets right now. But back to what the banks are doing, because this is where it gets really interesting. JP Morgan, which has been accused of manipulating gold prices for years, just did something shocking. They've accumulated the largest physical silver stockpile in history. We're talking about 700 million ounces of physical silver sitting in their vaults. That's more than entire countries hold. Why would a bank that makes money trading paper futures want to own physical metal? Because they know what's coming. They've seen the internal numbers. They know the paper market is a ticking time bomb. Deutsche Bank just released a report to their private wealth clients, the ones with $50 million or more, recommending an allocation of 20% to physical precious metals. Not ETFs, not mining stocks. Physical metal. When was the last time you saw a major bank recommend that? The answer is 2008. right before the financial crisis. And just like then, the banks are positioning themselves for what's coming while telling retail investors everything is fine. But everything is not fine. The London Metals Exchange just admitted they're investigating irregularities in their gold inventory. The Shanghai Gold Exchange reported unusual flows of gold from west to east. The Turkish central bank is refusing to return gold that was stored in London and New York. These aren't normal market conditions. This is what happens when trust breaks down, when countries and institutions stop believing in paper promises and start demanding physical possession. And it's accelerating. In the last 6 months, we've seen Poland repatriating 100 tons of gold from London, Hungary bringing home 63 tons from the Bank of England, Romania demanding the return of 91 tons, Serbia pulling 9 tons from foreign vaults, Slovakia retrieving 31 tons. When central banks don't trust other central banks to hold their gold, what does that tell you about the stability of the system? But here's what really keeps me up at night. The Basel III banking regulations that went into effect last year reclassified physical gold as a Tier 1 asset. That means banks can count physical gold the same as cash on their balance sheets. But paper gold? Derivatives? Futures contracts? Those are now Tier 3 assets, the riskiest category. The banking regulators are essentially telling us that physical gold is money, but paper gold is just another risky bet. Yet 99% of investors are still playing in the paper market. This reminds me of something that happened in Germany in 1922. The Reichsbank was printing money to pay war reparations. Everyone could see inflation rising. But the stock market was going up too, so people felt wealthy. Then one day, the music stopped. The currency collapsed. Stocks became worthless. The only people who survived with their wealth intact were the ones who owned physical gold. One man, a Berlin businessman named Jacob Goldschmidt, saw what was coming. While his neighbors were buying stocks and real estate with borrowed money, he was quietly converting everything to gold coins. When the hyperinflation hit, a single gold coin could buy an entire city block. Goldschmidt used his gold to buy up half of Berlin's commercial real estate for pennies on the dollar. We're not in Weimar Germany, but the patterns are eerily similar. Massive money printing, debt levels that can never be repaid, a loss of confidence in institutions, and just like then, the smart money is quietly moving to physical gold. Look at what Russia did. They spent 10 years accumulating gold, building their reserves to over 2,300 tons. When sanctions hit, they were able to continue trading with China, India, and Turkey using gold as payment. The dollar sanctions were meaningless because they had real money, gold. This is the blueprint other countries are following. Why do you think China is buying every ounce of gold they can get their hands on? They're not doing it because they think the dollar is strong. They're doing it because they know the dollar's days as reserve currency are numbered. The writing is on the wall. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, just announced they're working on a new reserve currency. Guess what it's going to be backed by? Gold. For the first time since 1971, we're going to have a major currency backed by gold. When that happens, the demand for physical gold will explode. But here's the problem. There isn't enough gold to go around. All the gold ever mined in human history would fit in a cube 72 feet on each side. That's it. That's all there is. And most of it is already spoken for. Central banks own 35,000 tons. Jewelry accounts for 95,000 tons. Industrial uses take 30,000 tons. That leaves about 45,000 tons in private investment hands. Divided among 8 billion people, that's less than 1/5 of an ounce per person. But it's even worse than that, because most of that investment gold is held by a tiny number of people. The top 1% own 90% of investment gold. When the rush for physical gold begins, and it will begin, there won't be enough to go around. We're already seeing signs of this shortage. The US Mint ran out of silver eagles 3 times last year. The Perth Mint in Australia is rationing sales. The Royal Canadian Mint has delays of 8 to 12 weeks for delivery. These are government mints. If they can't keep up with demand now, what happens when the real panic begins? And make no mistake, the panic is coming. Every fiat currency in history has eventually gone to zero. The dollar has lost 96% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. The only question is how long it takes to lose the last 4%. When confidence in the currency breaks, it happens fast. In Argentina, it took 18 months. In Zimbabwe, 24 months. In Venezuela, 36 months. One day you're worried about inflation. The next day you're carrying cash in wheelbarrows. But before the currency collapse comes the bank failures. And we're starting to see cracks in the banking system. Credit Suisse, a 167-year-old institution, collapsed in a weekend. Silicon Valley Bank, gone in 48 hours. First Republic, vanished. These weren't small banks. These were pillars of the financial system. What saved the system from complete collapse? The Federal Reserve printed $400 billion in a single week. They just created it out of thin air and injected it into the banks. But here's what they're not telling you. That money printing is exactly what's destroying confidence in the dollar. It's a doom loop. Banks get in trouble because of bad loans and rising interest rates. The Fed prints money to save them. The money printing causes more inflation and dollar weakness, which causes more bank stress, which requires more money printing. The only way out of this loop is a return to sound money, and sound money means gold. That's why central banks are buying. That's why billionaires are buying. That's why countries are repatriating their gold from foreign vaults. They all see what's coming. A monetary reset where gold is revalued much higher to back the enormous amount of currency that's been created. How much higher? Some analysts say $5,000 an ounce. Others say $10,000. Jim Rickards, the CIA's former currency war advisor, says $15,000. I don't know the exact number. But I do know this. When paper currencies are in crisis, gold is revalued to restore confidence. It happened in 1934 when Roosevelt revalued gold from $20 to $35. It happened in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window and gold went from $35 to $850. It's going to happen again. The difference this time is that you can see it coming. The central banks are telegraphing their moves. The physical shortages are already developing. The paper market is already breaking down. All the pieces are in place. Yet most people are still focused on stocks, real estate, and crypto. They're playing musical chairs, while the smart money is quietly taking physical possession of real assets. When the music stops, and it always stops, those paper assets will be worth exactly what they're printed on. Paper. Physical gold doesn't require anyone else's promise to pay. It doesn't need electricity to function. It can't be hacked, frozen, or confiscated electronically. It's been money for 5,000 years, and it will be money for the next 5,000 years. The window to acquire physical gold at these prices is closing. The premiums are rising. The availability is shrinking. The big players are accumulating. When the general public finally wakes up to what's happening, it will be too late. The gold will be gone, locked away in private vaults and central bank reserves. Don't be the person looking back 5 years from now wishing you had acted. The writing is on the wall. The smart money is moving. The only question is, will you be ready when the paper promises collapse and only physical gold remains? The choice is yours. But remember, in a crisis, it's not what you own on paper that matters. It's what you can hold in your hands. And right now, the people who understand what's really happening behind the scenes are making sure they can hold their wealth in their hands. Because when this monetary experiment ends, and all fiat experiments eventually end, the golden rule will apply once again. He who has the gold makes the rules.